Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Meta Cafe. Grab your cup of coffee or your tea, water, sit back, and let's chat about what is going on up in the sky today. We're also going to cover some human design today, and we're also going to cover, and when I talk about human design, I'm also talking about the gene keys, so you might as well just roll those two into one. And then we're also looking at some of the Pleiadian-Earth energies for the day. I hope everybody's doing really well. It turns out that it's a really foggy day here, and you can hardly see out the windows. It's pretty interesting when that happens. I know a good chunk of the country is in a frozen state. Definitely winter is upon us, right? We're getting to that cold part of the year. And in that cold part of the year, we are very tempted then to move inward, to move more into our caves, if you will, to come to a still point and a time of self-reflection and a time where we can sort of be instead of get caught up in the do. Although what happens for quite a number of people is we do get caught up in the doing because of the season, right? In the season of Christmas, the season of Thanksgiving here in the United States, it really is sort of the kickoff, the gateway to the craziness that becomes the holidays with all the hustle and bustle, when really what we want at the winter time is to come inward and see what's going on within us. So I'm not sure where everybody is this morning. I've been talking for almost 2 minutes, and I'm afraid that the lag on Facebook Live is getting worse. And I've noticed that over the last couple of weeks. It seems like I can talk for 2 to 3 minutes before anybody pops in. And yeah, I don't know what to think about that, but hopefully people will check in here with me shortly. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit about the energy of yesterday. Yesterday got to be such a great day, at least in my world, hopefully in yours as well, as I was able to really connect to some sort of planning energy yesterday. I think it was that Mars and Pluto energy, that was maybe it was Mars and Jupiter energy. Whatever it was yesterday, it was pretty powerful. And I was able to get clarity on some ideas that I had and decide maybe some key things about going forward in my business for 2020. And that's what I tended to focus on yesterday for in between clients was, what am I doing next year? How can I best show up and serve my clients, my listeners, the world at large? So if you found yourself in that sort of position yesterday, sort of thinking, looking ahead, without really living too much out there in the future, then you are in good company, because that's exactly where I went yesterday. Kind of that consideration of ideas. Where do I want to go? Who do I want to be? Where am I going to take my business? And where am I going to take my life in general? Although yesterday I didn't get to that part, I could very easily get to that part today if I wanted to, right? I could take it and go, okay, who do I want to be as a person? And what am I going to do that's going to get me to who it is that I want to be? Is there anything that I need to do differently? All of those things were up in my head yesterday. I think owing to the switch over from the moon into Gemini, it puts the focus on our thinking patterns. And real quickly, good morning, Elisa and Colleen Jackson. Great to see you ladies out there this morning. The energy for today, then, we begin with the moon in Gemini all day. And Gemini moon will be in an opposition to Venus in Sagittarius and in a square to Neptune in Pisces. So let's talk a little bit about what the Gemini moon brings to us. Well, first, the Gemini energy is the energy of being social. It is the energy of communication and variety and speaking with many different types of people, sharing of ideas. That conversational kind of energy comes up when the moon is in Gemini. So I call it active conversation, in that I fully expect that my messenger is going to be busy today. I expect that I'm going to have emails that I need to answer today, other social media, questions and things like that. Because when the moon is Gemini, that seems to trigger that reaching out with our voices to one another. So when I just label that sociability, where we may be, more feeling more sociable, feeling more like we want to have conversations, talking more on the phone, maybe talking more within our business, etc. When the moon is in Gemini, there's also that mental focus, as in Gemini is a sign that rules the mind, the monkey mind, as well as the more disciplined, focused mind. It's just a matter of where does the mind go and who's operating the mind. So I could operate my mind. I'm such a Gemini sometimes. I can be, in one moment totally scattered, which is typical of Gemini's thought processes. And then in a moment, I can switch that up as one of those scattered thoughts coalesces and brings me to something, such as what happened to me this morning. I was sitting here. I was actually ready for probably, 10 or 15 minutes early. So I was sitting here considering, is there something else I wanted to share today? Because I don't have a whole lot to go over. And all of a sudden, an idea hit me, and I started following that thread. That thread is leading me to something else that I won't be able to really cross into today. It was too much in the 10 or 15 minutes that I had. But that's what happens to us when the moon is in Gemini. We get these ideas, and then it causes us to sort of try to pull, I call it pulling threads, where we're pulling in the pieces of information that will lead us to what it is that we want to know more about or what we want to share. The sign of Gemini is often more logical than not. It is a sign that is also, when the moon is in it, we can see more sides of a situation. So it's sort of Libra-like, and of course, Libra and Gemini are related through the element of air, the sharing of ideas and thoughts, and also then this little hint of logic that allows us, if we're open, logic has a good side to it, right? It's not all, closed-mindedness, not at all. Logic can help us to see and predict patterns that are developing and allows us to see all sides of a situation or of a problem. And from there, we can act accordingly. So there is this really good side of logic. Science logic, though, sometimes breaks down because it refuses to see the other things like intuition and knowing that are equally as valid ways of interacting with the world. Gemini or the moon in Gemini also brings us more movement. We feel more, I'm going to use the word agile, and that's not quite the word I mean, but we feel more like we want to move, like there's a nimbleness in our body, in our limbs, in our hands, a more dexterous feeling. And in that, we want to move, we want to build, we want to do something. Maybe we want to walk, maybe we want to assemble something, maybe we want to cook, whatever it is that we want to be able to engage our hands and take action on ideas. So that is also a Gemini moon kind of characteristics. And then, of course, there's movement that is like trips that we maybe today there's a lot of people on the road. I wonder if I should check this out sometime and see if there's a correlation between the moon and Gemini and more traffic on the roads, as people may be inspired to go to the store, to go to the library, to run errands, or to just, take short trips to go and visit people. And then, of course, social media is another one of the things that has come under the auspices of Gemini energy. And of course, we all know what I mean by that: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So I'm half expecting a sort of tweet storm today by the president. Perhaps it'll be an Instagram storm. Who knows? But there could be a lot going on in social media. Or I got myself this morning. This is what I catch myself doing this morning. I sat down to help my husband do something on his computer. Next thing, and I had my phone in my hand. Next thing I know, it's 6:30 a.m. and I've been sitting here on my phone, checking out news stories, checking out email, and all of a sudden I look up, I go, "What are you doing? You have a show to prepare for. You need to get dressed. You need to get your makeup on. You need to do your hair." It was so funny because it was so easy to get caught up in all of the information world that was out there. So I guess that could be a good, bad thing. I mean, we want to become more informed when the moon is in Gemini, but getting informed could be the problem, right? Getting informed could be the problem as we spend more time looking at stories, looking at social media, etc. So it could be a good, bad sort of day, but hey, watch what you're doing, stay in awareness, and you'll be just fine. Just a quick word, tomorrow morning we start the day early with a void of course moon. It's a very short one, 5 hours long, most of it taking place, well, at least for me here on the West Coast, from 3:41 a.m. until 8:16 a.m. For you all on the East Coast, that's going to be what, 6:41 a.m. until 11:16 a.m. Slower start for you guys on the East Coast because it is going to overlap into your work day. For us on the West Coast, it is going to be more in the sleeping hours, although it will affect the slow start perhaps to the morning. And I'm thinking, yesterday I got the cutest pictures, you guys. One of our listeners in New Zealand sent me a picture of her two sons who are maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 and 5 or 6. They were sitting there, and in the picture you see the kids and you see the laptop with me on the laptop. They're watching my morning show in New Zealand. And I didn't get a hold of her in time to find out if I could share that picture with her, but with you guys, but it was so adorable. My 2 youngest listeners out there, and apparently every morning that's what they do. So I'm thinking I will start sort of advertising Australia, New Zealand time as well, since there seems to be a grouping of people that are in those countries, as well as Europe. And I'm never quite sure what to tell you guys as far as the time. I know in Europe, you're probably about 7 to 8 hours ahead of me. So if it's, I think, 6 hours ahead of the East Coast, maybe it's 5 this time of year. So if I say the moon is void, of course, from 3:41 a.m. my time, that's likely going to be about 10, 7 hours, about 10 to 41 a.m. for you all in Europe to 5 hours after that. And in Australia, I have no earthly idea. It's going to be on a different day. So I'm thinking I'm going to start doing that. So be watching, as I try to figure out who's in what time zone. And I love it that we're such a global connection at this point in time, right? I'm sitting here in my little bedroom in Samish Island, Washington, and this is broadcasting out around the world. And it sort of boggles the mind to think that there are people so far away that are also hearing the sound of my voice. And it makes me remember how interconnected we all are, and how all of that, all of us in a moment can be connected to one another, our hearts, our minds, our voices. And it's just really, it gives me chills. I'm getting chills. You can't see that because I have long sleeves on, but I am getting chills this morning over that thought. We also have Venus in a square to Neptune today, but I think before I jump into that, I want to share the Pleiadian-Earth energy of the day, as it sort of sets the tone for how I named the show this morning, about my ideal world, or in my ideal world, blank, right? I said fill in the blank, because today this energy really focuses us in on what is ideal. And if we don't have the ideal, how do we create the real? So the real world will be created by what it is we're focusing on. And wouldn't it be great if we could create based on our ideal world? So in an ideal world, we all love one another, and we remember love before we do anything. In an ideal world, perhaps everybody has enough food to eat, has the dream job, has enough money to cover their bills and help other people. So we can claim these ideals, and we can turn them into reality, as opposed to just settling for the reality that we think we see. And I'm going to ask you to question what you see as reality. So let's start by talking about the Pleiadian-Earth energy and where I'm coming up with this kind of thought process this morning. First of all, yesterday was the 13, so we were at the end of the week. We were completing things, getting ready for a new beginning, and that new beginning is arrived here today in the one day of the calendar. This is initiation, and this is new beginnings. This is energy. The 1 days are energy that are pulsed to us via source, God, goddess, whatever you want to call that, from the cosmos. And this fills us, fills the earth, fills the universe with possibility, and possibilities born out of intentions, and the intentions to create the new, to create perhaps the ideal, right? To create something new. It is a point of potentiality, a point of potentiality. It is almost like light that doesn't coalesce into form until an observer observes it. So there's a connection between possibility and potentiality that remains unexpressed until we, as the observers, observe it and make it into form. And that raises this question then about why do we settle for a reality where that bites, some cases, and instead not move to what we want to live out? What do we want to create? So today, this point of potentiality means that anything and everything is possible. You got to love that. Anything and everything is possible. And in the Mayan calendar, as well as in the Pleiadian-Earth energy, the 1 day sets the tone for the next 13 days. And here we have a tone then that's set for us in the energy of one catalyzing. And catalyzing energy is also associated with the beginnings, right? What do we need to catalyze a movement, a change, a new project, a new idea? So the point of potentiality then, where anything and everything is possible, and it is just waiting for us to choose, right? We're beginning the new, we're expanding into new awarenesses, new projects, new ideas, new ideals, and then initiating something new here. So catalyzing energy in the Mayan calendar was Kawak. It was Cauac, and it was the energy of the storm. We've talked about it before, where a storm, like a thunderstorm, any kind of storm, actually clears the air, right? Out of that chaos and the swirling mass of air and water, there's a sort of alchemy that happens that clears away the old, sets the tone for what could be, right? Changes the energy up. It is making a difference through our vibrational presence on the planet. What vibration you show up in, as or what your frequency and your vibration are at any given moment is going to help decide how an energy shows up. If you show, and you could see this happen, if you're angry about something and you get behind the wheel of the car, everybody seems to want to cut you off on the road, or people are going too slow and you're getting more angry. Road rage is building up because you entered into the system in an angry frame of mind. Where when you enter into it in a peaceful frame of mind, what happens? Well, even if there's traffic, it just seems to flow, and the music on the radio is just perfect for the moment, and the flow of energy moves in a completely different way than if you enter into it with anger. And remembering that you always have a choice of how you enter into a system. That's basically what this is saying. Each as individuals, are making a difference in the world through our vibrational presence. Who are you showing up as? Or what energy are you showing up in? So the potential in this day, this is the earth energy, by the way, of the day. So for those of you who might be new, the 1 is the energy that is a universal energy. If we were living on Mars, we would be resonant with that energy. If we were living in the Pleiades, we would be resonant with that energy. The catalyzing energy is earth energy. So that is just playing out here on the planet. But this is about catalyzing transformations. People who are born with Kawak or catalyzing energy in their chart have often very stormy lives. It's almost like life tests them sometimes to see how willing are they to transmit or transform the drama or the trauma into peacefulness. And that's what we're also being tasked with, at least here in the US right now. There's this whole swirl of things about the impeachment inquiry or the impeachment, I don't even know what to call it. The trial, it's not even a trial, but the proceedings, let's call it. And that creates this swirl out there of energy of he said, she said, Democrats versus Republicans, and blah, 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 blah. And what we need is a catalytic transformation here. And I'm not going to say that the arguing and the fighting and all of that kind of stuff that's coming up isn't serving a purpose, but it's not in the process yet of clearing out karma, which is what really should be happening on a catalyzing day. Clearing out karma. And think of a storm clearing out the stale air, right? Or the air that's gone, that's just sat around too long. It needs to be stirred up. And think of the storm then as a mode of clearing out karma. Having trouble with my words here. My mind is thinking in too many different directions. So here we get a chance to look at the traumas and the dramas that are going on in the world around us, and even within us, because really they're just the outer world is an outpicturing of what's been going on within us, as something that's designed to clear the karmic field. So when we see our outer world, no matter where you live, whatever's happening, whether it's fires in Australia, whether it's fires in California, or big snowstorms, or chaos in governments, all of that outer world chaos is an expression that's clearing the karmic field. So here we have a day today where what we need to do, what we need to apply to all of that is sensitivity and empathy and compassion. These are the things that love. When we apply that energy to the chaos out there, it's almost the same as a storm coming through and clearing everything out. And then afterwards, we're left with the crystal crispness of the air in its newness. The sun even appears to shine brighter, etc. So we're all familiar with that energy of the storm that comes in, clears everything out, and it's crisp and fresh and clear again. Well, that is pretty much what this catalyzing energy is doing for us. So we're filled with possibility through the one energy. And the possibility is that there's this chaos that we can use as a storm to clear away the dust and start fresh in our lives, starting fresh. Okay, let's take a look at comments now that people are showing up here, or at least I'm seeing that you show up. You've probably been here for a while. Good morning, Jan and Colleen McSpirit. Great to see you. Michelle, good to see you this morning too. And Mimi, good morning. And Kathy Miller, hello. Debbie Tibbetts Tumiel, good morning. Karen Devine, good morning. Kathy says, good morning. Another day of errands. The little boys like to watch you because you have a soothing voice. Oh, thank you. Christine, good morning. Londa, good morning. Allison, great to see you with us again this morning. So I hope you all out in the east there are warm, safe, cozy. I don't know. I didn't check the weather this morning. I just knew that I can see the fog is lifting here as the sun is starting to shine, but I didn't check to see what's going on the East Coast. I hope you guys are warm. A friend of mine yesterday who lives in Toronto sent me a picture of snow, and she said, "Can you believe this? It's not even winter yet." And I sort of chuckled at that because global warming, right? So anyway, it was funny. I chuckled at that, not because of her suffering in the cold, but just because, so many odd things are happening, snow. And anyway, Toronto shouldn't be new to snow, but maybe it's early for them, and that's the deal. All right, let's go back to astrology then and talk a little bit about Venus square Neptune. So we have, again, through the Pleiadian energy catalyzing something new, catalyzing, initiating new ways of thinking, new ways of being. So Venus squaring Neptune, and so what we have is the moon opposing Neptune, or the moon opposing Venus, excuse me. We have Venus squaring Neptune. So we have the three, moon, Venus, Neptune, very much up in our faces today. And it is about grounding our values. Venus represents our values, and she's sort of the common denominator here, right? She's in a square to Neptune, while the moon is in an opposition to Venus. And so she's sort of sitting in the middle of these two energies, and she's taking us to live by our values. And of course, there's finances involved there as well. I don't know that this is so much about finances as it is about, are we living truly from our inner directive? Are we living from our I hate to call it moral compass, but there, because that just sounds like it's being dictated to us from outside of us. But are we living from our integrity? There's another good word. And how we can ground our values in is by expressing them as ideals. That's why I left that blank. In my ideal world, blank. In my ideal world, what fills in that blank? Because we won't ever be able to ground in that value unless we know what the ideal is. So in some cases, what we think we see, and there's another connection to the eyes right now with Jupiter at the gate 11, Venus moving to the gate 11 tomorrow, and that gate rules the eyes, or the left eye specifically, and the left eye ruling the right brain. And this becomes a possibility of seeing so much more. But sometimes it's the arising of the reality that we see, and then we feel like it's real. Thus the name reality, real. But is it real? Is it real? Is what we see really real? And then if it isn't, if it just feels like it's real, I used to have a friend that would say, it feels so real, doesn't it? When bad things would happen, she would say, it feels so real. Because there's a space there for choosing a different outcome, or choosing a different path, or a different expression of the energy that we see as reality. And by expressing our ideals, then we begin to ground that in as a value. So, for example, if we continue to value this crazy, divisive energy that we see of separation going on in our outer world, then that's what we're choosing as reality. But if we choose instead to start bringing, people closer to us, or aligning ourselves in peace with other people, and, seeing other ideas as just different expressions, then we begin to create an ideal of that can turn into a value that gets expressed into what we think is reality. We're always choosing, in other words, our reality. I hope that makes sense, people. It blows my mind when I think of this, because first of all, we're living in a physical planet. We're, feet on the ground, right? There are real trees and plants and animals and stuff out there that I can see, feel, taste, and touch. But where did it come from? Right? Where did it come from? How did all of the molecules and atoms coalesce to bring this into being, to bring this into being? And when you think about it in those terms, reality cannot be, reality is sort of the final effect of an idea or an ideal. So that ideal then is very important. It's very much about shining the light then on ideals that we can then coalesce into reality. Reality didn't come first, right? Somebody had an idea about a container for water that would also have a straw, so that I could drink from that instead of having to get bottles of water or go to the sink every 10 minutes and get new water, right? Somebody had that idea. That was an ideal. In an ideal world, I have water with me all the day long. And somebody turns out and makes it a reality. I mean, and that's just one simple little thing. Think about the bigger, wider realities that we take for granted. But they didn't coalesce and start. They didn't start there. The reality didn't start there. It started as an idea or an ideal that we then grounded into reality by our continuing vision of it. Our continuing vision of something creates it. So, for example, Mimi, you're an artist out there. She made me this beautiful scarf, right? This started out as an idea. It wasn't real to begin with. I mean, sure, there was fabric, and then there were paints, and then, there was dye, or whatever she used to make this. There were those things, but she took them and created them, right? So what kind of ideas and ideals can you take now and create your reality with? Right? All of those traumas and those dramas aren't real either until you choose to react to them or to create them as a reason to be sad, mad, glad. I mean, even the joyful expression of life is a choice that comes from an ideal that you turn into something real. And that even then I would question its reality, because in a moment you could choose, because of something someone says to you, to get angry and create another reality. So reality is sort of liquid. It's sort of ethereal. It isn't solid. Even science will tell you this, as solid as it sounds, isn't solid. It's made up of mostly space, the space between the molecules. We see it as denseness, but on the molecular level, there's a whole lot of space, a whole lot of potential to create something different, right? If I threw this at the wall, I'd likely crack it and break it. I don't know why I would do that, because I really love this, but I could choose to do that. So it's all about your choices. It is coming down to, what is it that you want to create in an ideal world? And then when you focus on that, when you initiate that, catalyze that, then it becomes reality, or what we consider reality. And we're always doing this every day, in every moment. We are choosing. And that also then is another lesson in being responsible, right? Response-able, where we are choosing how we're going to be, who we're going to be, how we're going to show up in the world, etc. And if you choose, you could also show up as angry, and you can show up as an activist. No one's saying that your choices are wrong. It is that it is your choice, and your choices have created, all of our choices collectively have also created the expressions of what we see in the outer world. So we can't run away and hide. We have to understand that we're creating. You are co-creating a reality with everyone around you. What do you want to co-create? Right? Do we want to co-create this continued division, separation, or are we ready to bring and choose unity? Our choice. And then I'm going to take this over to one other thought. And this one shows up through the gene keys, through the human design, and that is the planet Jupiter, that represents our growth, our expansive natures, our generosity, our magnanimity. The planet Jupiter, also self-righteousness, and where we can get off track, by claiming that our truth is the only truth, is right now sitting at the gate 11. And the gate 11 in your human design, actually drew a chart up of the human design this morning, here's gate 11. It is sitting at the ajna, which is the second center down. It is a center that we can think of as the mind, where, the thinking, analyzing, memory recalling, comparing, contrasting part of your energy. So when you think, it's coming from here, right? The ajna. The head center is the center for inspiration. So you might be inspired to follow a particular trail of thinking. You may be inspired to go out and sit outside amongst the nature. Those are the things that come from the head. But the ajna itself then takes in all of that and kind of categorizes it and puts it into thoughts, right? Thoughts. And when we have something like Jupiter sitting at the gate 11 that's engaged with vision, literal vision, then what we see is what we're tempted to believe is real, when in fact what we see is only the byproduct of an earlier thought or an earlier idea, an earlier choice. An earlier choice that we made. So the fact that Jupiter is at gate 11, Venus will be at gate 11 tomorrow, I believe it is, tells us there's this emphasis now on the mechanics of visual connection, vision, seeing. How are we creating a reality? And it is about what we are attuned to in the light. So if we are attuned to the light of love, it's like having a Reiki attunement, right? What are we attuning ourselves to? Are we attuned to health? And are we attuned to abundance? Are we attuned to sharing and giving and exchanging? Are we attuned to anger and upset and dramas and traumas and, feeling powerless? What are we attuned to? And then from that, once we discover what we are attuned to, then we turn that light into a reality. We use the light almost like a focusing lens to create the reality. So when we have planets sitting at these gates, the gate 11, what we see is that there's this darkness. The darkness holds pure potential, right? It's like the void. And in any moment, we can choose what goes into that light. It's like having a blank canvas and choosing what you're going to paint upon the canvas. And even if there's just this little pinprick of light that you can see there, you can begin to create from an ideal. In the gift level, this is ideals and idealism, right? In an ideal world, this is what happens. In my ideal world, XYZ, right? That's why I left that blank. Fill it in. And, you guys, I would love for you to share with me this morning what you would fill the blank in with. Oops, I should go back to some of these comments. So fill it in for me. In my ideal world, what happens? And in my ideal world, then, there's this sense of timelessness that comes up. This is all a part of, dang it, I didn't write this down. It's part of the ring of, I think it's the ring of light. Hold, please. Let's see what that is the ring of. Codon ring of light. I was right. I should just listen to my intuition. The codon ring of light. So the gate 11, where Jupiter and Venus are going to be taking up residence, where Jupiter's already been in residence, Venus just joining it. Our values then are aligned with the light. And the codon ring of light says, out of obscurity, out of the dark, and into the light. But the light is a choice. It also comes along with it. The other gates that are in this ring of light are timelessness, gate 5, and gate 26, the gate of integrity, which in its highest gift is the gift of invisibility, and the gate 9, focus. Right? What are we focusing on? If we take a camera, what does a camera do? It uses its lens to focus light to take a picture. So much like our eye works the same way, right? You have a lens in your eye that focuses light back onto the retina that then projects a picture. What are we seeing? What are we choosing to see? Because it's the ideal and the idea that starts first. What are we focusing the light on? And then it becomes real, right? And that puts a lot of, that there's definitely the potential here for obscurity, where we don't see the light, right? Where we cannot see it because we're not looking for it. So the potential here is we look for the light. We can look for what is it that we want to create? What are we calling forth? This reminds me also of the energy of creating heaven on earth, right? We're always earthlings, religion always has us looking forward to heaven as if it's only something achievable by death and being a good person. But heaven isn't a place we go when we die. It's something that we create while we're living here on the planet. Now, I don't profess to know what happens after we die and what, but I would imagine it's much easier to create heaven when we die because we don't have the dense of space and time coalescing here, space and time where we're oriented in the physical world that slows things down, thankfully. So what are we creating? Well, maybe we are trying to create heaven on earth, but what we've achieved so far is hell on earth. So those mythologies of heaven and hell and all of that, they're very powerful. And I think they lead us down the wrong road if we're not really looking at who's the creator here. You are a co-creator with source energy. Source is providing the pool of energy that you can create from. And what you choose to create from is specific to you and what you're focusing your light on. It's sort of backwards. Feels sort of backwards. Okay, Mimi says it's 38 degrees this morning, warmer than it was. Woohoo! Linda Marie, good morning from Canada. Nice to see you, Linda. Thank you for joining us. Colleen says 40s today, which is a lot better than the past few days. Woohoo! Mimi says, "'Tis why art brings me joy. The creation process keeps me sane as well. I love it." Catherine Worster joined. Hello, good morning to you. So, all right. Nobody's put in what is in their ideal world. I don't know if that's just because there's a lag or if you don't know. Has anybody ever asked you? Have you ever asked yourself what's in your ideal world? Or are you so caught up in the real that you can't see the ideal? That's another potential that happens to all of us, is it seems so real. We get so caught up in the real or what we think is real that we just keep focusing on it and empowering it, making it stronger, making it bolder, and never questioning, why did I choose this reality, or why did I choose for this to come into my reality? Being a co-creator means you also need to take responsibility for your creations. Being responsible for your creations. Now, because I was sort of looking ahead this morning, I wanted to remind everybody that coming up December 11th, I will do the Astrology for 2020 webinar, and that is sort of a misnomer. It isn't just the astrology, it's the astrology, human design, and gene keys, but that just makes such a long title that I just labeled it as the astrology. Maybe I should have written it as Divining 2020. I don't know, but that is a webinar where we're going to cross into what is the high side potential that we could create from for 2020. What are the challenges, the shadows that are also going to be there with us? That is a $25 webinar on December 11th. You can go to the Living Astrology Facebook page, and it is right there. It's pinned to the top, so it's easy for you to find it. There are two ways you can join. You can pay $25 and join the webinar, or you can join the Living Astrology Academy membership for $13 a month, and you get free webinars every month because I do them every month for the membership on what's coming up for the month, and among other things. So that information is up on the Living Astrology Facebook page, also on my website, which is living-astrology.com. And now, last thing for me this morning that I noticed as I'm already, putting together material for 2020 is that we've already talked about the fact that on January 12th, right as we start that new year, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction occurs, the exact one. They're within orb of one another and have been for the last year. So we're already seeing sort of the building up of what that energy brings. But on that particular day, that was part of my thought processes this morning. What's going on that particular day from a human design perspective? And from a human design perspective, that day, the Sun and Mercury and Venus and Saturn and Pluto are all sitting at the gate 61. That made me go, we probably should spend some time now really looking at the gene key 61, the human design gate 61, and what is the energy that that brings us. Well, the gene key 61, if we look at it through the shadow and the gift and the city, it is the shadow of psychosis. We can certainly see that, right? The shadow of psychosis. And if we bring it up to the gift level, which is, just our embodying something different, right? Our allowing for the shadow, seeing it, we can move into the inspiration as the gift. Inspiration, the state of being inspirited, right? The state of being in spirit. And then the highest energy in that siddhi, the siddhi energy, is sanctity, which, wow. And the gate itself is called the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies. I, for one, want to dig into this. If you guys are with me, we might just form some kind of a study group or something where we can really dive into the gene key 61, since there will be such a focus on it as we move into 2020. And of course, I believe that's going to start out before we get to 2020, as we've already got Pluto sitting at that gate right now. Saturn is still at 54, but will be shortly moving closer. As it moves closer to Pluto, we'll be also at the gate 61. The sun will be there in January, as well as Mercury and Venus. And at other times, Jupiter will also pass through that gate as we move a little further into 2020. So when you see a gate where there's going to be a tremendous amount of focus, I think it's, incumbent upon us to take a look at that. To maybe look at it a little bit deeper and see what is it that we want to take from that. What is it we want to create with that energy, that's potential? And we can start by recognizing the shadow and then embodying the gift and the siddhi state. Siddhi, S-I-D-D-H-I, not city like the city we live in. Okay, Colleen says, I do know my ideal world, but too much to type out while walking a husky puppy. Oh my goodness, you should put pictures of your little husky puppy here. And I get that, right? Sometimes the ideal world is a picture I can hold in my mind, and yet it's hard to put words to. It's hard to verbalize. And yet it's exactly what we need to do, right? So otherwise the choice makes us. Linda, good morning. Mimi says, I keep getting the thought of flexibility. We start with one direction, yet often learn it will be helpful to shift our path. Example is, I had one idea about painting a scarf. Nope, that didn't work. So what might I do to change the theme? Final result was both fun and better for the flexibility. Exactly. I like that. Linda, or Londa, what gene key? I think we were talking about the gene key 11, which is where Jupiter and Venus are in the moment, but the bigger picture of the gene key was 61. So 11 and 61 were the two gene keys we've talked about today. Camille, my ideal world would include staying in the universal flow, always in the right place at the right time, to be invited to participate in the flow as it enhances every aspect of my life experience. My ideal is simple. And isn't that funny? Ideals usually are. The ideals really are simple. And the real, when it becomes real, that's the complicated part. And that's a part of the gene key that we're experiencing with the Earth this week, is that of simplicity, right? The shadow energy is complexity. The simple is the gift, right? That's the funny part, is that we created this massive, complex, hard to break down into easy bite-sized pieces kind of world, when in simple truth, the reality is we want love. We want enough to eat. We want to share with others. We want to live, love, and laugh. Pretty darn simple. But we've created a monster, right? We've created a monster because our minds have been overly active. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I don't mean to say we've done it all wrong and bad on us, but it's now the awareness that we can choose a different path. We don't have to go the path of complexity. We can go the path of simplicity, which says, these are the things I need. There used to be a song, All I need is the air that I breathe and to love you. That was, I don't know, Tom, I know you'll find it for me and text me that song later and tell me who sang it and what year it was. He's really good at all that. Being a musician himself, he's tuned to music. I just remember all I need is the air that I breathe and to love you. And also by corollary, then all I need is the air that I breathe and to be loved. Fun, right? All right, that is it for me. Thank you, Camille and Mimi, for sharing a bit about your ideal. And Colleen, I get it, walking a dog, that's, you got to keep your mind on what you're doing. If you guys want to, feel free to come into the Living Astrology page or email or messenger me your ideal world. What is in your ideal world? And the idea being that we can all sign up in your ideal world, right? There was a scene in the movie, it was in the book, actually. I'm not sure if it was in the movie, Eat, Pray, and Love, where somebody was driving and another woman was the passenger in the car. And she had a vision, something she wanted to create. And her friend says to her, well, who would join you in creating that? Who would join you in that belief? And she said, my kids would. So she said, okay, great. Your kids would join you in that belief or in the expression of that thought. And then she said, Oprah would believe me, would join up with me in that. And, before long, she had, her family, her friends, her just people she worked with that would all join her in this creation that in this ideal that she was trying to bring forth. We can do the same for one another, right? I will sign up to Camille's ideal world. I think that's awesome. That at the right time, she's invited to the right opportunity and the right people. The timing is elegant and would be perfect. I can sign up for that. I would support you in that, Camille. Mimi, I will support you in your being flexible. I will support you in that. I sign up with you in bringing forth flexibility as an ideal. And whoever else has any ideal that I would sign up to that as long as it was a positive expression. We can do that for one another. So here, at the moment, however many people are watching live, however many people, hundreds literally, that listen later in the day, they'll sign up with you, Camille, right? They're going to sign up with you. They're going to believe that that ideal is worth bringing forth. They're adding the energy to your ideal. That is how we shift the collective, by the way, is when we engage with one another's ideal worlds. In an ideal world, everyone has enough. In an ideal world, abundance is ever present. I would sign up for that. I bet every one of you would sign up for that in that ideal. So all those ideals can be expressed, and other people joining their energy to creating that with you, make it more powerful and create like the snowball effect, right? That just, as it starts to roll, gets bigger and bigger, more real. All right. Well, that is it for me. Mimi says, sounds good. I love it. Camille said it's important to pare down to what is essential to one's best life, not the Joneses. Exactly. Right. Not the Joneses. Keeping up with the Joneses is something that happens in the will center, the ego center of the human design chart, where the spirit of competition, where we get kind of pulled into this competition, where we feel like, well, they have more toys than me, so I need to go out and work harder to get more toys so that I'm competing with them. I can keep up with the Joneses, which of course is not real. No one needs to compete with anybody. You are who you are in your own right, empowered, beautiful, and can create the world of your own dreams as well. Okay. And Camille says, awesome. I return the support in gratitude. We've created a snowball already, right? So let's keep building the snowball based on our ideals and our values and move forward by expressing those into reality. All right, guys, take care. Have a great day. See you tomorrow. It's Friday already. We'll be doing a couple of card readings. We'll have we'll take a look at what's happening for the weekend. In the meantime, take care. Bye for now.